investigating what it's like to raise the animals that we eat for food, raise the vegetables that we eat for food. Every day we hear new stories in the media about what's happening with our food. For instance, today I saw in the New York Times that meat processing plants that have been inspected and failed inspections repeatedly were ordered to stay open. The Department of Agriculture couldn't close them down because the judge ordered it as more important for the plants to stay open than for people to be safe from E. coli, bacteria, and salmonella. So I want to get to know the farmers. I want to get to know the people that grow my food. If I can't grow my own food, I want to know the people that grow it. So that's what we're going to look at today on Food You Can Trust. Well, I want y'all to listen to the expert here. Okay? Get ready. We have a little 5-acre certified organic farm in the middle of Dania, downtown Austin. I guess we've had the farm stand there since about 1994. And I'm going to say right now, there was a very good friend of mine who actually had a farm stand out in Ribbon Springs. And I can't tell you what an inspiration she was to us in doing our farm stand. She's sitting right here, Mary Ann. When we went out there and saw their situation was very different from ours because they were in Dripping Springs. They were in a rural area, and they were making a farm stand work. And then on the other hand, we had an urban farm. We had more people at our disposal, so to speak. And we were able to make it work. So don't think you've got to be in a big town to make it work. Because Mary Ann proved that you could do it in a rural area and make it work too. That's the big thing. Farm stands will work. People will come out and people will buy from you at your farm stand. I will break this out into a question and answer situation because I know I'm assuming there's some people out here that are either wanting to do, kind of the thing that we were doing or know somebody that would. A few things that I would like to talk about in our situation. Having a farm stand has enabled us to, and kind of, I guess you would say, in the trade pedal. I can't go to a farmer's market and sell Dan's peaches or Bill's milk or Pure Lux goat cheese or Pete Lawson at Lawson's Farms eggs and things like that. But having my own farm stand, I can do this. And I see myself as supporting local agriculture or small growers or other producers that are small and want to get into the business. I can help them along the way because I have a market for their products. In farmers markets, generally that sort of situation is prohibited. And we feel like we've done a pretty good job since 1994. We've had our farm stand open, and it is getting bigger and better every year. The big problem I have right now is being able to grow enough produce to supply the market. And after I get home this afternoon, we'll really see how well I'm going to do it next week with this hard freeze. Is there anybody? I would like to see a little show of hands. Anybody around here that's actually farming now? You doing it? Okay. I know you know Mary Ann's doing it. Jay over there is always doing it. Are there any one of you in here that's really interested in opening up a farm stand? Okay, well that's a good show. There goes Dan over. Dan, you can do it, I think what I'd like to do now is just kind of break it open into a little question and answer thing. This will
can expound upon, so I'd just like to know if there's, what questions you have, and I'll do the best I can do to answer. Yes, sir.
You have your place there at Boggy Creek Farm, pretty close to downtown Austin. But at some point, I guess you had to acquire more land to be able to grow more things to provide. And now you have another farm out in Milam.
Yes, I have. Yeah, I have 5 acres in Austin. It is certified organic, and we cultivate about 3 acres. And with the present, when we started off, when we first started off, that's all we really needed. I mean, for about 2 years, we really didn't grow anything up at our Gauls farm. We've had our Gauls farm since 1981. And, but when we first started farming in Austin, well, actually in 1991, we farmed the Gauls farm. We didn't own Boggy Creek Farm then. And so we had this little farm up in Milam County. And I sold my first bunch of carrots in front of Wiggy's liquor store at 6 in Blanco in Austin, right in the front door of the liquor store. And that's where we got started. You know, I made $40 the first day I went down there, sold in front of his liquor store. People would come by and they'd say, "My God, organic vegetables in front of the liquor store." I said, "Well, you know, when you go in here and you use this guy's product, you need some organic vegetables." So I didn't disagree with that. But then when we bought the farm at Milam in Austin, we started farming it, and for the first 2 years, I mean, that 3 acres was all we could do. I mean, it was just 2 of us, and it was hard to do any more than that. We didn't need any more land. But after about 3 years, we needed more potatoes. We needed to put in an acre of potatoes, or we needed to put in a half an acre of onions or something like that. We had to have more room, so we moved up to the Milam County farm, and we started farming it in conjunction with what we were doing in Austin. Pretty much we have to follow all the rules of TDA, and we have to follow, you know, some local health department rules. The TDA situation, yeah, I've got to have a retail license. I've got to have I've got to have my greenhouse certified, my farm stand certified, my processing shed certified, my commercial kitchen has to be certified through TDA as an organic situation. And then plus, you know, you've got FDA if you're going to do processed foods and things like that. Yeah, we have to do all that kind of stuff. Yes, ma'am.
Are you located on a major road?
Well, the question was is whether or not we're located on a major road. I'm a 30-minute walk to the front door of the Capitol building. I mean, I can walk to the Capitol. I can walk to 6th Street and Congress in 25 or 30 minutes. I mean, I'm just 2 miles from downtown Austin. I'm in the middle of a neighborhood.
What I'm asking is there a lot of drive-by traffic? Is that how you generate traffic?
No, as a matter of fact, a very small portion of my business actually comes from the people that live in my neighborhood. I mean, I just...
Did you put signage up?
You have to go.
Yeah, you have to know. Yeah, you have to know that we're there. Something that would something that would give you a real good idea about our situation is our website. We have a fairly good website, and it's boggycreekfarm.com. My wife sends out a newsletter every week. We now have about 2,000 on that newsletter, and so we send that out every week, and that will tell people what's going on at the farm, more or less, what we have, what we have for sale at that market. It also tells you where you can get any of our other products in any other area.
So really, you just generated your business by word
That's it. We made a very big mistake. We put a $7.50 ad in American Statesman one time. That's the only money we've ever spent on advertising. I mean, other than, like T-shirts or, books or things like that, but as far as, book or magazine or anything like that, we don't.
Start over. We're big on winter.
Oh yeah, we're big on winter here. We love salads, and all the crops growing here from fall to till late spring actually, spinach and lettuces, leeks and carrots and beets and turnips and escarole and endive, frisee and radicchio, and just anything that'll make a salad, anything that'll make something that we need for winter. We do a lot of greens. They have a lot of vitamin K in them, which builds up your blood, makes your blood thicker, keeps you warmer. So we're big on winter. Winter crops are great. Now in the summer, it all changes, and a lot of our production moves up to Milam County, to our farm there.
It's not so hot.
Well, it's hot. It's very hot, but we have more room there. And so we're growing a lot of watermelons and hard squashes, and they take up a tremendous amount of land. So that stuff will be there, and the potatoes, which are another big land hog, and the main crop of the onions. And here we'll be doing things that are more delicate, French sorrel and the flowers, and some of the okra that has to be picked almost every day.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody up there wants to do that, so we'll pick okra here. And the sweet corn will be here. And sweet corn is a major event in June. So we'll have the sweet corn here because we want it fresh. We just go out with wheelbarrows and bring it right in. People take it right home or eat it on the spot. It's better eaten raw. But this summer, we're going to be cover cropping a lot of the land here because it's just time for it to have a rest. We're going to be putting in sorghum, which is hopefully the timing will be right that I can have some chicken feed out of it too. And we'll be doing some sweet potatoes here, which are a good smother crop. They choke out a lot of weeds. And maybe a few peas and stuff, but any kind of crop that will smother the weeds and shade the soil and protect it, and that can be worked back into the land to rejuvenate it.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of production will be at the Milam County farm this summer.
Thanks.
You bet. But just nice to have it home.
How about that? Okay, hi.
We came out with our first T-shirt about 6 years ago, I guess, and then we've done a cookbook since then and things like that. And these are value-added products. We've done fairly well with the books and the T-shirts and those types of things. We sell Richard Heineken's rainwater. We sell Pure Luck Organics goat cheese, Pete Lawson's eggs. We've picked up Suzanne's eggs a little bit. Tim Miller, who has Millburg Farm, we're selling his fennel right now. So basically, what we have right now are things like cabbage and arugula and a salad mix and a baby arugula's mix, lots of broccoli, some cauliflower right now. We have sugar peas right now. We have his eggs. We have the goat cheese. We have the water. We carry an organic tofu. We carry a wheat roast that has a product. I've developed a product called smoked dried tomatoes. I have
Did you read all those orders out of the Savor magazine?
Ma'am?
Did you read all those orders out of the Savor magazine?
Savor magazine? Yeah, we were in Savor magazine with that product. And fine cooking. And that's one of the things about what you'll find out is once you have your farm stand and you have these kinds of things in your farm stand, and once you get people coming to your farm stand, all of a sudden you become the news. It's one of the reasons you really don't have to go out and spend hard-earned money taking out a newspaper ad on your business or anything. Pretty soon you're going to be the news. It was just like Louise was saying, people call you wanting to know, will you mail them produce? all these kinds of things. All of a sudden, you become the news when that happens.
He's going to tell us about what he does with some of his tomatoes.
Okay, this one here is called Poco Picante. Stopped making it 1 year, and we had so many calls for it. People just wouldn't have it, so I had to start making it again.
Now this is made with your smoke-dried tomatoes?
Has smoke-dried tomatoes in it, and as a matter of fact, these are the smoke-dried tomatoes right there.
Now how do you make smoke-dried tomatoes? I know you said you give the recipe away to anybody crazy enough to do it.
Well, you just take and slice them half in two, and you put them in a smokehouse for 5 days, and after that, you've got it.
So all you need is 5 days in the
5
smokehouse
days in a good smokehouse.
and some good tomatoes.
And some good smoke.
Okay, now what else? We got tomato
Okay,
tonic.
we got tomato tonic here. That's another one we make out of our processed tomato juice.
And what do you use tomato tonic for?
It's just
drink?
a good sipping drink, yeah. You
Oh,
could throw a little vodka with it or something.
Okay.
It's good like that. Then we make a spaghetti sauce. It's our spaghetti sauce. And also we have beehives up there, so we
This is
have
up
our
in
own
Milam
honey.
County?
Yeah, up in Milam County. So we have honey. And then we do a lot of salad mix and stuff like that in the wintertime, like right now. So in the wintertime, I make a tomato-based salad dressing. Seems to be mighty good. So that's just a few of the things that we do.
And you're also involved in supporting other farmers and
Absolutely, yeah.
by having their products here.
Yeah,
What
we
kind of
have
products you have?
Pure Lux goat cheese in there, and we have some eggs by Lawson Farms up in Milam County, up to Gauls, the other farm. And so we just carry other, some people's products out here. If they're organic, things like that, we're glad to support them.
Good. All right. Well, we'll talk more in a little while.
That sounds like a good idea. We understand, like the cookbook. Then we came out, we had chickens. We have a chicken house. People love to come to your farm and just sit in front of the chicken house. I mean, people get stressed out in cities. People get stressed out in cities. You're in the city. You're in a noisy atmosphere all the time. Red lights, stop signs. You're in a lot of these heavy environments and stuff like that. People like to go somewhere where they can just sit and maybe see something that's peaceful, something that's out of the normal. Sometimes chickens will get out, they'll just be mingling around the farm stand with other people, their children. We have mothers that come out and bring their kids, especially on Wednesday. It's a big day for mothers, and they bring their kids and let the kids see the chickens, play with other kids, and be at the farm. The kids go out and the kids see broccoli growing in the broccoli season, and they see the strawberries in the strawberry season. All these kinds of things like that. So those people will tell other people, God, I'll just go out there, it's so calming, it's such a good environment. It's why we can charge retail for our produce.
Chick, 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 chick. Can 11.
Have a good day, good luck.
$3.50 for a dozen eggs, $6 a pound for organic beef, $3.75 for organic chicken, $18 and $20 a pound for cheese, $2.50 for a pound of broccoli, pound of cauliflower, $1.50 for cabbage, a pound. Carrots, baby carrots in a bunch, $2.50 a bunch, things like that. Because you're all small players.
Larry, one of the things that I have been, in my research, I have found that agritourism is becoming really big, and farm stands are tied into that.
Very much so.
In other words, the farm stand, if you thought the retail outlet on the farm, you're the entertainment.
Absolutely.
So having a farm stand is actually like an entertainment to these
exactly, yeah.
Absolutely, that's correct.
So do you do farm tours? I mean, do you have people tour your farm, or is that just sort of?
Under certain situations, I mean, in other words, if Toga was to have a, let's say, a convention in their next conference, let's say if it was in Austin, I know who is it doesn't really care much for Austin. I'll say this: Austin's a hub for this kind of thing. It's and I will admit Austin's a little different. If you go to Bryan College Station, everything at the farmers market is thought to be cheap. How cheap? And when it was like I was reading the Louise's, the letter, the Toga letter here. I was reading it to take it out of my pocket. When I was reading this for a friend of mine, I said, I said, Pete, was this guy, he runs the Brazos Valley Farmers Market in Bryan. We sit here talking about how to cut out the middleman, how to sell retail, how to try to make a living being a small farmer. You go over to the Brazos Valley Farmers Market and get on the radio or the TV over there and say, man, you're getting cheap. Come to the farmers market where you can get fresh produce cheap, Man, you can just get it so cheap. 8 cucumbers for $1 is what they're selling. Can you imagine getting 8 cucumbers for $1? 60 cents a pound for tomatoes. Hell, you can't pull them out of the field for 60 cents a pound. Okay? You got to be able to make a living if you're going to do this. We love it. I love the business. But I got to be able to make a living. Got 8 employees to feed. And so you got to be able to do that. So you can't think about that. There's two kinds of farmers markets. There's the cheap farmers market. How did I get it cheap, man? I want a bushel of peas for $9. It's cheap. That's not your clientele. That's not the one you want. That's fine for somebody that's set up with a card table. They can do that because they've got they're getting $75,000 a year at Dell, building computers or whatever. They don't need to do that. It's a hobby for them. Hobby gardeners help kill farmers. People like you that really want to go out there and make a living do it. The hobby guy kills you. Okay? And that's what a lot of these markets, what you want to do is you want to go in there and try to sell fresh. Not a grocery store in town, not even Whole Foods, the god of organic, can sell produce that's fresher than what you can. I mean, when I go out into a field and I lop off a head of broccoli for somebody and hand it to them, they're getting an organic product. They're getting a product that's fresh, grown right there, picked when it should be picked. If Whole Foods is getting $2.50 a pound for broccoli, God, why shouldn't I get it? If they're getting $2 for a head of lettuce, why shouldn't you get it? I mean, you got to make a living. They said, well, they've got overhead. Well, I've got gas bills too. I have employees to pay. I have taxes to pay. I've got insurance to pay. I got to make that money. So there's another kind of farmers market that's a growers only market where everybody grows what they produced. It's fresh, it's in season, it's not peddled in or bought in or whatever. And so these guys y'all need to be making the money. You don't start out cheap because, well, I'm just starting out, maybe I better be cheap. Don't do that. You're better off at selling potatoes for $2 a pound. And what you have left over, haul them off, throw them to the compost. It's better to sell 10 pounds of potatoes at $2 a pound than 20 pounds of potatoes at $1 a pound. It's better to do that. Because I'm not going to hurt you I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to say, well, Dan over there's he's got a ton of peaches. God, he's getting $1 a pound for those peaches. Man, I got a ton of peaches too. I'll sell them 50 cents a pound, And then they're going to go over here and say, well, this guy's a thief. What's the matter with you? You thief. So I would rather go take that 10 pounds of potatoes and go compost those potatoes. Or carry them to the food bank, give them to the poor on the street, take them to Salvation Army. I would rather do that than destroy my market or his market. Think about that when you go to a market.
So I have to ask myself, am I ready to pay more for better food, food that I can trust? I know that when I look at myself, I have a big aversion. There's something in me that tells me I should buy the cheapest food possible. I know I want to value myself, but still there's this big aversion to paying more for better food. With my chickens here, I figured out the cost of feeding them and how many eggs I get out of them. Just as an example, egg production is one of the more lucrative forms of home farming and small farming. And I figured out that I put almost 5 cents of food in each chicken for every egg I have. And then if I add packaging, marketing, and selling the eggs, I have to be about 10 cents an egg. You know, most people pay about 6 to 7 to 8 cents an egg. To really make money selling eggs, or even to make enough to pay for my own egg consumption, I need to sell eggs for 20 cents a piece or $2.40 a dozen. And I have to ask myself if I would be willing to pay $2.40 a dozen. I know these eggs are much better, and actually after I started eating them, I can't stand regular eggs anymore. And I need to learn more about how eggs are produced, how factory farming works with eggs. For instance, before I used to eat free-range eggs, thinking that free-range eggs was really something great. But after I've looked into it, I found out that free-range means merely that the birds have access to the outdoors. But the way the birds are bred and raised, the birds are too lazy to go outside because the food, the water, and the air conditioning is inside. So they have a door that goes to the outside, but they never go out. So there's not a whole lot of difference between free-range eggs and cheap commercial eggs. So I have to look at, what are these names selling me on? What do they really mean? And what's the difference between a pastured egg and a free-range egg? I can tell you from my own experience of eating them, it's a complete 100% difference. And pastured eggs are so much better. Just a little food for thought here on food you can trust.
Dan's question was, if I was to start a farm stand today, would I do it differently than when I started it back in '94? No, I don't think so. No, because what we've seen, and some of the old folks can tell you, we've seen a lot of awareness in the market. We've seen a lot of awareness. I mean, there's been a lot of growth in the industry. I mean, the organic industry has been growing 20-25% a year. So basically what we've seen people do is open up farm stands like Angel Valley, some that have opened up some farm stands, and they just, boom, they're off and running. I mean, one of the things we did when we opened up our farm stand, before the advent of email and all this stuff, when that really got hot, we used to do a little note called Miss Ethel note. Miss Ethel was a little guinea hen that we had, and Miss Ethel would write a little note every week for the salad mix, and we'd put that inside with the salad mix. And people used to go to Whole Foods and would sell it down, and they'd get the salad mix, and they'd be just standing there like that, reading the note and thing. And then when the email came along, started doing a newsletter. And so now that our newsletter probably goes somewhere between 10 and 20,000 people a week. We personally send it to 2,000. And we know, because we get responses back from a lot of the people, and they don't blind carbon copy their response back to us. So we see everything that they've forwarded it to. And some of the people that send back responses to them, I mean, they've got 15, 20, 25 people that they have forwarded the newsletter to. And then some of those people forward. And it goes all over the United States. The big, we want it in Austin, obviously, but I mean, it's just something we've provided in our emails and stuff like that, or in our website. And to been good marketing. So we've really made a lot of awareness in the marketplace, and we've been able to come in and so if I was going to do it again, yes, I would just do it like that. There's a lot of awareness out there.
So you didn't feel like you shot yourself in the foot any time?
Not that I'm really aware of. I don't know. I think I've shot myself in the foot too. Yeah.
I just want to say about your emails, it doesn't just list what you have available on the farm. The stories that Carol Ansell's write are truly delightful.
Well, thank you.
I mean, we get lots of junk email these days, but I look forward to that email probably more than any other email I receive always.
She enjoys doing it, and she's got the knack for it. I mean, she has the knack for it. I mean, she can sit down and she can bang out one of these things every week. Just bam, 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 bam. Just we've got. She's done over. I think she's up to about 275 emails now. One a week. Rare she misses a week. She missed this week. It's just too wild and crazy this week. But that's been a marketing tool. It's been a big marketing tool. And we've been lucky. We've been very lucky. I'll have to say we've been very lucky.
Okay, tell me why you come out here at Boggy Creek.
I worked on an organic farm in Germany for about, I guess, 4 or 5 months a few years ago, and I never ate better. And when I heard about Boggy Creek being here, I had to check it out. So this is only my second time. I don't make it down here.
So you worked on an organic farm. Are they doing things the right way here?
It looks like it, yeah. Yeah, I'm no expert, but it certainly seems like it. It feels like it.
Uh-huh.
You know, just walking around here.
That's part of it. You just get a certain feeling when you're out here.
Yeah.
Cool.
My name's Alex.
All right, Alex. Thanks for talking with us.
Sure. Nice to meet you.
Oh, I had an old garage. It was built in 1929.
Okay, but was it attached to your house?
No, it's just sitting out under a big oak tree.
So,
We started off with 2 sawhorses, a piece of plywood, and an umbrella.
okay.
And then we grew into the garage. Then I built a shed. Then I put up some of these Sam's tents. And then I took those all down and put up a permanent shed because it looked like we were still going to be in business.
Camera guy, yeah?
Yeah.
You're on the TV.
We're on the TV,
And the ones that kind of have a little purplish cast to them is because they're cold.
Hard to judge it. It's one of the nice things about having it at your farm. You know, you can send old Mary Ann out in the field to get that extra bunch of rosemary or whatever it is out there if you have to have it. If you're stuck at a farmer's market, there you are. What you take is, you're not going to sell any more than that. And that's one of the things that's been really good for us. I mean, we went out to the field this last Saturday. Last Saturday we went to the field and cut 3 extra big tubs of broccoli because we ran out. We just went and picked some more. It's a good thing about a farm stand. You can do that, you see.
Hombre, pero ahora ya está malita y está mi mamá, ¿verdad? Pero y la nuera como quiera batallando con ella. De todos modos, está batallando con ella. Y dice, fíjate, me tocó batallar con ella. Y todavía estoy batallando, pero hoy sí con ella. No vienen, dice, y no me podía ver, tú sabes, y cómo le gustaba. Y la que la está viendo ahorita. Y le digo, anda, déjala, le digo, mira, ya hasta Dios sabe por qué la... ¿Verdad? Le digo, tú no reniegues, le digo.
The magic formula is get what you've got to have to be able to maintain your business. I mean, you try not to just blow people out of the water, you know, $10 a pound for tomatoes or anything like that. I mean, you got to have something that's somewhere reasonable, but you just don't have to be cheap.
Is there a website, like USDA has a website, different prices?
Yeah, and I think, isn't it Growing for Market? Don't they have a website that posts prices? kind of a guy, I use Whole Foods. I just go into Whole Foods.
Paycheck.
I go into Whole Foods, see what they have, you know, and you know, it's crazy because that's gorgeous Anaheim peppers. I hate being the cheapest. I hate to be underpriced on anything. It just breaks my heart. And so when I go, you know, I'm selling Anaheim peppers for $3 a pound. And I live on the poor side of town, and I go into H-E-B on the poor side of town, I see Anaheim peppers $3.69 a pound. That's good hardly standing, but I didn't go up on my price. So we'll just be cheap until next year.
This is Eric Poser of Wink Restaurant.
Eric. Now he's from where?
Wink.
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 What is Wink?
Just a little small restaurant here in town.
Oh, cool.
We buy a lot of our stuff from here.
Now, where's your restaurant? What's the address?
No, it's at 11th and Lamar, right behind Whole Earth Provision Company.
So it's better to get your food here than somewhere else.
Well, heck yeah.
Well said.
You can combat yourself too, because you can go buy cilantro 39 cents at H-E-B sometimes. A lot of times, number one, that product's getting ready to be fed to the hogs. If they don't sell it today, tomorrow won't do. Number two, a lot of these stores have lost leaders. I mean, they get you in there for 39 cents a pound. For tomatoes, it's proven that you can't even pick a tomato to get it out of the field for less than 32 cents a pound. So how can these guys be selling tomatoes at 39 cents a pound? They're lost leaders. It's either getting ready to rot and go to the hogs, or it's just a lost leader to get you in there to buy that expensive chicken at 69 cents a pound or something. Isn't that right, Richard? Jay?
I have two questions, Larry. One, on your tomatoes, you have so many tomatoes that you're having to juice them. What do you do about stink bugs? And my second question is your commercial kitchen part of your house, or is it something that you have to build totally separate from your house?
Well, my dad, I really needed the commercial kitchen to be up in she asked if, the commercial kitchen needed to be in my house or near my house or whatever. My commercial kitchen's is in a shed that my dad says, well, if you want to use it, you can use it. So I built a commercial kitchen in there. It cost me $1,500 to build a commercial kitchen. The sewer tap in Austin was going to run me $3,300. So it wasn't a hard decision to make. I put it up there. That's where the tomatoes are. I have them there, and that's where I process them. We've also made jams and jellies. We have wild plum. We have wild dewberry. We have pear trees up there. So I do a lot of jellies. I do a lot of jams. We put up a lot of tomato juice.
Okay, what about stink bugs?
What about stink bugs? Yeah, I've got some.
Tastes great.
It's organic, let me share.
Well, the best thing I've ever seen with a stink bug is
Organic.
2 brick bats. Smash with brick bats. I don't really know what you do about it. I've got some stink bugs, and I'm like anybody else. I mean, I've got stink bugs. I've got vegetable weeds. I've got grasshoppers. Blowtorch is real good for grasshoppers. Get one of those $500,000 BTU jobs. Man, you can John Lane those grasshoppers. I don't know if it does any good or not, but boy, you feel good. And you see those guys go boom, and they just pop and blow up. It's a wonderful feeling. But I still have a lot of things that eat up grasshoppers, so I don't know. This is a business. It's a very interesting business. I mean, when one thing you always want to do is, no matter how successful you are, you always got to realize you better be humble. I'll tell you what, Mother Nature will get your attention right now. And so you just have to keep things in perspective. And you just want to go out there and you want to do the best job you can. And you got to work hard. It's a 7 days a week job. So you work hard, you do the best you can do, and that's all you can do. And you just want to be honest with yourself, you want to be honest with your customers, but all in all, you've got to make a living doing this business. It's just too hard not to make a living. And the people that don't price their products to where they're going to make a living, they won't be there. So when you were asking the question about pricing products, you have to look at your farm and your situation and find out you've got to have what you've got to. Sometimes it may be a viable industry. Sometimes it won't. You had a guy from Waco come up there, and Carol Ann even did a newsletter about it one time. Guy comes up there, he's got a big Stetson hat like Richard over there, and me. My dad gave me a Stetson hat for Christmas. Guy comes up, he's from Waco and everything, comes rolling up this great big huge Lincoln Town car. Man, I mean, this guy had a diamond ring about as big around at the top of this thing. Man, his wife, she was looking good, I mean, she had on the rings and the stuff like that. He got out and he says, we want to do what you're doing. That's it. And so Carol Ann writes this little newsletter. She tells all about this guy. She says, well, with us coming up in that, she asked if he said he wanted to do what we're doing, and what did we recommend? And she said, well, those jewel-crusted hands and that town car, we recommend you just keep doing what you're doing. You're not going to do it. Madam, your fingers will not look like that in 6 weeks. If you want to do what you're doing. And so there's some people that are cut out for the business. There's some people that are not cut out for business. But it's a wonderful business. A lot of stuff. I mean, seeing people drive down the road with food that you have grown for them to feed their family with, it's got to be one of the biggest highs I've ever had. Really, I mean, you're feeding people. I mean, for Christ, I mean, you're feeding people food to eat. And it's the best quality. You're not poisoning anybody. I mean, you really you feel good about yourself. And that's what makes the business worth it. Other than that, it's too brutal. Just too brutal.
Baby peas? Are there any on there? This is where they grow. It's just like our baby pea plant at home. Let's look and see if we find some. Whoa, careful. There's a lot of peas out here, huh? Do you see any? Did they pick them all? I think they did a good job of picking them. Whoa, you okay? Oh, here's one. Baby pea. Here's your favorite, baby peas. Yay!
Yes, baby. They're taking food right out. That's the good kind. We don't want to spray that.
Hi, my name's Kevin, and this is Food You Can Trust. Today on the show, we're going to hear from two ends of the spectrum, a theoretical approach
to engineering water collection systems, harvesting rainwater, and a more natural approach, lessons learned from nature from Malcolm Beck and the story of Gardenville. So sit back and enjoy food you can trust. But we're here with Food You Can Trust. This is Malcolm Beck. He's agreed to talk to us for a minute. He's got loads of history and lots of stuff for us to learn. And we'll just start off talking about natural foods, the quality of foods, why it's important to know your farmer, why we need to find food we can trust.
I'll tell you how I got started in this. When I was a kid eating at home, I got pretty good food, but when I got 18 left home, I lived off of junk food pretty well. And I developed bad sinus. And I went to work for the railroad at age 19, and they had the best medical doctors in the country. So I went to 3 different good medical doctors. None of them could do anything for my sinus. Finally, the third one told me, he said, Beck, you just gonna have to move to Arizona. You got sinus worse than I've seen anybody. So I figured I'd have to live with it. Visit my dad. He said, go see my doctor. He's an osteopath or something like that. So I went over to visit him, and he put a stick on my tongue and looked down my throat and said, uh-huh. He pulled a stick out. I said, uh-huh, what? He said, well, I think your sinus is being caused by your tonsils. I said, well, I ain't never had bad tonsils. He said, well, we'll take your tonsils out and you find out your sinus will go away. So I went up there. His hospital was the upstairs, an old 2-story shack. Anyways, he put a bunch of needles down my throat and deadened me down here and stripped me off naked and strapped me tight to an ice-cold stainless steel chair. Then he got this beautiful nurse to come into to assist him. Now I'm sitting there with just a little apron in front of me. And he starts digging in my throat, and I'm spitting blood all over him and that nurse. And that pair of pliers he was using, or whatever it was, he kept pinching my lips. And I couldn't talk. I couldn't tell him because I couldn't even motion. My hands were stapled down. Anyway, when I got out of there, man, I felt like the devil. When I woke up, I really felt bad after I went to sleep. And I made a promise to myself, ain't nobody gonna touch me with a pair of pliers and a butcher knife again. Anyway, time went on and nothing happened. My sinus was as bad as always. My nose would swell up. I couldn't breathe through my nose sometimes for several days. I'd have bad throbbing headaches and drainage down my throat, sore throat, and an upset stomach. That's how bad it was. So I went back to him. I said, Doc, it did no good. And he said, well, it's still an allergy. He said, I said, what are we going to do now? I said, well, we're going to prick you with a needle to find out what you're allergic to. I said, what? He said, yeah, we'll prick you about 200 times. I said, no thanks, and I got out of there. Anyway, I figured I ain't going to spend all this money on these people doing research on me. Anyway, a buddy of mine I worked with on a railroad was over my house one day, and he said, come on, ride with me down here to this natural food store. I bought me some stainless steel Corey cookware, and they told me if I would steam organically grown wheat, that it'd be good and healthy for you. Anyway, I went with him to this natural food store, and he's back there talking to a lady, and I'm sitting at a juice rack, at a juice bar, spinning a rack, with pamphlets on it. And a little pamphlet stopped right in front of me, and a caption on it said sinus, and it showed the cutaway of a skull. Well, I grabbed that and I read it. And it said sinus was caused by food allergies, and the worst food allergy was refined carbohydrates. So I asked the lady down at the store, I said, what's a carbohydrate? She told me. I said, well, what's a refined carbohydrate? She said, well, the best way I can describe refined carbohydrates is white flour, white sugar, and alcohol. I said, you just told me my diet. She says, well, eat decent food. And he said, you ought to be eating whole wheat bread instead of white flour bread. So I said, my wife likes to bake. She said, we got whole wheat flour. Anyway, I left there with I think I had $6.50 in my pocket, and I bought a pretty good bag of groceries for that, all natural stuff, whole grain stuff, sweeteners, honey, and stuff like that. Went home, I told my bride, I just got married, I said, this lady said if we'd eat like this, I'd get rid of my sinus. So my wife was willing to go anywhere with me on that. Anyway, got on that diet, stayed strictly with it, just natural foods, that was all it was. 2 weeks, my sinus is gone. I couldn't believe this. I could breathe, no more headaches. So now I got interested in this. And about that same time, I just bought a farm, even bought it before I got married. And I wanted to be a modern farmer. I didn't want to do that stuff that my dad and my grandpa did, so I got myself a copy of the Progressive Farmer magazine. And in there was an article about the Colorado potato beetle, how it had migrated down into Texas. And it told about all the damage it was doing. It told about the pesticide you needed to control it. And I got to thinking, I had a big garden already. I better go look see if I got Colorado potato beetles. Well, there's some beetles crawling all over my potato plants. And must be potato beetles. So I went to the store and I got the recommended insecticide. And the next morning when it's damp and no wind blowing, I'm out there dusting all these plants. And this same buddy walks up and says, Beck, stop, you're killing ladybugs. I said, ladybugs? I thought these were tater bugs. He said, no, those are good bugs. So what? I killed some good bugs. Oh, it was something like maybe 2 weeks later. My potato plants started looking bad. And I didn't see any beetles on them, but when I looked on the underside of the leaves, they were full of some kind of lice, little bitty insects, just full of it. So I called this buddy, and I told him, I said, my plants are full of some kind of little lice just all over them. He said, yeah, those are aphids. He said, the lady beetles were on there feeding on the aphids, keeping them in check. And the lady beetles reproduce real slow, but the aphids reproduce a generation every week. He said, now you're going to need more poison. So, my feelings kind of hurt now. Here was a city boy telling a country boy something I should have known. I said, well, how do you know about this? Good bugs and bad bugs. You didn't grow up on a farm. He said, no, but I've been reading a little magazine called Organic Gardening and Farming. I got several copies of that magazine from him, and through that whole magazine, the editor, G.I. Rodell, was trying to sell a philosophy. Grow adapted plants in the proper season, in a soil that's balanced in minerals and rich in organic matter, and do nothing to harm the beneficial soil life. And the plants will grow naturally, and you won't need a bunch of chemicals and you won't need them to keep them propped up. Well, that made sense. Got to thinking about it, I said, well, that's the way my dad and my grandpa farmed. And I went and read back in this Progressive Farmer magazine, and almost every page was advertising some chemical you need to be a modern farmer. A lot of them are toxic. And I got to weighing these two philosophies. And I got to thinking, well, sure, it's all together. All of our food comes from the soil. The quality of the soil determines the quality of life on earth. It's as simple as that, because the soil gives birth to all life. And if we let the soil degrade to any degree, the life it supports will degrade to the same degree, because all the food we eat comes from plant life. It grows in the soil. Even though you butcher a cow or eat eggs, it still came from plant life. So I got to studying this. So my wife and I decided that we're going to operate our farm like that. We're going to study nature, and it's pretty simple. You just study nature and do what she's been doing since day one. And we raised 5 children like that. And our children were never sick, never sick. We had no doctor bills, because we fed them what we grew off of the farm and didn't let them eat a bunch of damn junk food. And they made good grades in school, and they loved school. They loved to go to school. And they weren't interested. We had the TV, but that didn't interest them. Of course, they had the farm, they had water holes, they had horses, they had junk cars, they had motorcycles, bicycles, or whatever at their age, They had heaven on earth and didn't realize it. Horses to ride and everything. And my kids very seldom ever miss school. The only time they miss school is one of the boys wrecked his little motorbike and hurt his knee. Had to take him to the doctor. The daughter got thrown off the horse. She hurt his arm. She had to go to the doctor. And one of the boys stabbed himself with ice pick and didn't tell us, and he got blood poison in there. The only doctor bills we ever had. And it's the only one boy went to school 11 years without ever missing a day of school. And the creek came up, so we allowed him to stay home instead of walking out the back. The creek divides is between us and the road. And the kids were never whiny, never complaining. They're always happy, no doctor bills, no problems. My sister lived in town. Her kids ate the regular junk food diets. And they were the same age, the same amount of kids that I had. She'd bring her kids out, and they were always whining and complaining. And they'd try to follow my kids in the woods. They weren't part of the environment like my kids were, and they got bit up and scratched up and stuff. My kids would come home, you couldn't even tell they'd been out in the woods. And it just gets back to nature. Study nature, throw books away, except my books. There's a lot of scientists said that. Throw the books away and study nature, you'll learn a whole lot more. And that's more or less what we did. And life got to be fun. I cured my sinus. My wife had health problems. They cured up. Our kids were a joy to raise. They were never complaining, never whining. And they didn't need Ritalin. I don't know what that says. But you know, I only have 2 of the family, actually 3 of them that stayed on that. 2 of them don't much care about it. It's modern ways is taking hold. You know, it's again, this grandpa and grandma had old-fashioned ways, or mom and dad had old-fashioned ways. And they more or less need to be hit between the eyes with the 2-by-4, like I was, you might say, going through this thing with my sinus.
Right, have something really go wrong
Right, and
first
make you
before you
think,
can
make you
appreciate.
realize it.
Right. So maybe you know, after 20 years or something going away from it, then they'll appreciate what they had.
Well, anyway, we had a nice farm out there. I love to grow vegetables, and this old farm was wore out when I bought it. I mean, in a good year, Johnson grass wouldn't even grow knee high. It was just hay to dust for 82 years. It so happened it wasn't long after I bought my second farm. I lived on that first farm for 11 years, and it had pretty good soil to start with. And boy, this little farm, it was manicured. It was beautiful. I had a new home I built myself, dug the second well. I had a pond out there full of fish. Planted a bunch of pecan trees, had 75 pecan trees, I had a dozen fruit trees, and sheep and animals and pigs and everything, and beautiful, you know, doing it all natural. It was a challenge. I wanted to see if I could do it all natural, and I found out, hey, it's even easier. Well, I did use the extension service, the agricultural extension service, as far as planting dates and where I could buy certain seeds and things, and they helped me as much as they could. And Dr. Sam Cotler was here. And anytime some dignitary from A&M would come to San Antonio, he'd bring them out to my place. He wanted to show them what these 2 faddists were doing out there. Some people called us hippies. I didn't have long hair. I didn't have earrings. I wasn't smoking pot. But we was doing, you know, bucking establishments, so I guess we were hippies. And a couple of those PhDs were out there. And, you know, I was using manure for fertilizer and cover crops, stuff like that. And one of these guys said, Malcolm, it makes no difference if you use chemical or organic fertilizers because the microbes have to process either one of them into an ion form before the plant can use it. Well, that's true. And I really didn't know why the organics worked over the chemicals, but then it dawned on me after I got to studying physics. Nothing can happen without a source of energy. Before those microbes can process the chemical fertilizers that you buy in a bag, they have to have a source of energy. Well, they'll use up the energy that's in the soil. That's the organic matter, the humus, the carbohydrates that's in the soil. And you keep using chemical fertilizers, pretty soon you've used up the energy that's in the soil if you're not adding it continuously. So when they use up the energy in the soil and the microbes don't have enough energy now to process the chemical fertilizers, you know, minerals are minerals. You can't deny that. Well, then the chemical fertilizers are not properly getting processed, and they're not in perfect balance in the bag. We can't balance it like nature does. And you don't know what kind of additives are just the byproducts, you know, like a 13-13-13. Well, what's the rest of it in that bag? There's something else in there besides just N, P, and K and a few traces. So that's what you add into your soil instead of energy. Well, organic fertilizers, or anything that once alive, so that means it has the trace elements, the minerals, the minors, the traces, and the majors pretty well in balance to sustain the next generation of life because it too was alive at one time. So it just makes sense. It's in balance because it was alive at one time. Mainly there's a lot of carbon there and carbohydrates to serve as an energy source for the microbes to process it into an ion form. And this is 4th grade logic. You know, you don't have to be a scientist to, once you understand these things, to understand why the organic fertilizers are better. Now, you can use some chemical fertilizers if you add a lot of compost with it. Then you're getting pretty close to nature again. But then again, you don't even need to do that because there's enough waste out there.
So the compost already has the chemicals in it, so if you're using compost anyway.
With the energy and everything, it's in balance because it was alive at one time. You already got the microbial activity there and everything. Anyway, Dr. Sam Cotton was out looking at my little farm, and he said, Beck, this is beautiful. He said, you sure you're not using any of our modern chemicals? I said, no, I'm being a purist. I said, this is a challenge. I said, this is my hobby, to see if I can beat the system, you might say, work with nature. And I said, I proved it. And he said, well, this is nice, but this is not practical on large acreage. He said, we have to feed the world. Well, here was a new challenge. Went in the house and I told my wife, I said, we're going to sell this little farm and go buy us a new farm. Well, my wife never argues with me. She just throws a comeback at me. She said, okay, if I'm on a move, she said, I want to go to Comal County. I want my kids to go to Canyon High School. She said, oh, I want a house far back off the road. I don't want no road traffic. I want a creek on the place. I want a live oak tree in the front yard. I want a bunch of big pecan trees around the house. Oh, and I want good, deep, dark soil while we're at it. We're going to farm. And I want a good well like they have in San Antonio, Edwards Water. And she went on describing all this stuff. Well, for fun, her and I would drive around, look at old farms we'd like to buy. We found that farm. I mean, the one she described right to the T. We bought the thing. We sold the place, the little farm we had, for more money than we paid for that farm. Now we had a big farm. And this was that, boy, that place was wore out. That's the one that was hated to death for 82 years. Lucky, Robert Rodell from Organic Gardening and Farming was down visiting me one day. Anytime he comes through Texas, he'd come out and he'd have dinner with us because everything off the place was grown right there. I mean, we had peaches and we had honey, and my wife was an excellent cook. That's one of her talents. And Robert would always come and eat with us and really stuff himself. Anyway, so Robert, I got to show you around this farm. And I told him, I said, man, this old farm is so wore out, it's just hated to death for 82 years. I says, why do you have any suggestions? And he stood there a minute and looked. He said, well, your land is level. It hadn't eroded away. He said, your land is clay. It got the nutrients tied up in it because it's alkaline. He said, all you need is energy in a soil. Well, where does the energy come from? The energy comes from the sun. How do we collect the energy from the sun? Through plant life. All of our energy comes to us through plant life. Coal, gasoline, butane, whatever it is, it came through plant life. So I said, thanks, Robert. That's all I need to know. So you use adapted plants. So what's the best adapted plant? The best adapted plant was all them weeds that were growing out there. So I worked for the railroad. That's how I made my living. I could do all this experimenting around, see. Had a good railroad job. So I had a sickle bar mowing machine on my farm tractor. And I start mowing the fields with that sickle bar mowing machine. See, that don't grind them up. That just cuts them off at the ground and they lay over. And every time the weeds would come up and start to bloom, I'd mow them off. They'd come back, start to bloom. See, they'd want to complete their life cycle because they never left them go to seed. And pretty soon I had weeds laying real thick on the ground. In order to speed things up, I learned to mow in road gear. Boy, I knew where the ditches were. Really had fun. See, it was fun, even working at nights a lot. Well, I had this big weed crop after about 18 months, almost 2 years. Spring came. So I decided I'd plant Sudan grass in there. Well, the soil was still so poor, no microbial activity, no nitrogen, and all those dead weeds laying on top of the ground was really robbing some of the nitrogen out of the soil. That Sudan grass got up there about ankle high. Didn't grow much more than that, it just couldn't grow. So I figured I needed a legume, something to put nitrogen in the ground. I needed a winter legume because winter was coming on. So I went to King Seed Company. And I told him I'll need a winter legume. The guy said, well, what do you want? I said, I don't know, just give me a big one. So the guy asked me where it was located, and he said, oh, you want Hubam clover. He said, it grows big, it's got a big deep root. He said, now get scarified seed so it all comes up the same year. You know, in nature, some of the seeds are thickly coated with shellac, so they'll wait until good conditions to sprout in. He said, scarified, like a bluebonnet seed, you got to do that, scratch them up so they all come up at the same time. Well, I bought scarified seed, and then I got the inoculant to put on it so it would farm those nodules with that bacteria in it that takes nitrogen out of the air. And I planted some 64 acres of that clover. I just cycloned it out there and ran across it with a light harrow to shake it through all that mulch. And this was October, mid-October probably, and a rainy spell came and every seed came up. And that stuff started growing, and it got 8 foot tall. That's the tallest anybody's ever seen clover. I had a botany professor from Lay Lake University come out there and document it. 8 foot tall, I couldn't reach the top of it. You get lost walking out there in it. And I left it go to seed, and I hired a guy to come combine. He said, well, I come look at it. When he saw that big clover, it was drying down. He said, no way am I going to put my combine in here. I said, why? He said, this is so big and tough and thick, it'll just choke it up continually. I said, well, ain't there something I can do to help you? He said, well, if you just walk along with the combine and back up the chokes so I don't have to get out of the cab, yeah, I'll combine. We started combining that stuff, and he kept saying, man, I ain't never seen this much seed come off a piece of ground. I never seen this much seed come off. I didn't know. I thought that was normal. He said, man, you got a bumper crop here. Well, I saved all this seed, put it in a barn that I had there, advertised it on Farm and Ranch Show. And people came out and started buying that stuff. I started out at 90 cents a pound. When I got through selling, it was $1.60 a pound. And I ran out and I'm still getting calls. That's the most money I've ever made off that farm. That was easy money. Anyway, this botany professor, when he left, he said, now Beck, you know, this is the last time you can grow a clover crop this big. I said, oh, why is that? He said, well, he didn't know, but that's what the old timers tell him. I got to say, well, what does he know? He ain't a farmer. However, he was a farmer. But he never grew clover. He just going by what the old people told him. So I said, man, a bird nest on the ground, all you got to do is throw the seed out there and wait for harvest. The deer don't eat it. The insects don't bother. You get a little bit of rain, and you make big money. So I planted another crop, a few bam clover. But that professor was correct. You can only make one big clover crop. But I found out why. See, if that stuff was 8 foot tall, that root was 8 foot deep. And the stalk was as thicker as your small finger. And the lateral roots were loaded with those nitrogen nodules. And then all of that biomass that I grew underground, science tells us there's more underground of a plant than there is above. And there was a lot above ground. And then with all of that weeds that I'd mowed down, plus all of that clover now, stalk that was laying there, and those roots rotting off in deep channels and forming all the humic acids and carbonic acids and everything, and all the high microbial activity. Now, weed seeds and grass seeds have been laying in that soil maybe for 50 years, waiting for this condition. You had the microbial activity and the humic acids, the natural acids in the soil, to eat off this thick shellac coating, I guess you'd say. All of these seeds sprouted. Well, with all of these seeds sprouting, I had every type of grass and herb and plant and weed you could think of. Oh, my clover came up, but it had so much competition it wasn't worth combining. But let me tell you something, that soil turned from yellow to black. Before, if it rained a whole lot, you couldn't walk on that soil, you just bog in, no structure. I'd irrigate for a long time, I'd go out there and I couldn't even change the irrigation pipe because I'd just sink in. There was no structure. After that, it could rain, I could walk out there and you barely made tracks because the soil had structure. You'd think it'd just be the opposite, but it ain't. From then on, we grew some beautiful vegetables. And I didn't have room always to grow a cover crop. So I had my 2 older sons now, were 14 and 16, learning to drive, so I bought them each a 3/4 ton pickup. And I was paying them $2 a yard to go around the neighborhood to pick up manure. They'd built a polo operation out there by us, I think it was 1970 or 71, somewhere along there, 72 I believe. And they had a lot of stable bedding. And my boys, I was paying them $2 a load. Boy, it worked like the devil just to get to drive. It wasn't the money. And them little boogers one day made 13 loads each, and they were full loads, 4 yards each, loading it by hand. They were doing good, and of course I was doing good too. But we had this big pile of manure. I'd get a neighbor to come over to the front end loader and push it up on a big pile. Then when the crops were out of the field, I and the boys would load it back up. It'd be pretty and rotted now, and we'd haul it out there and plant vegetables. Our high value vegetables like tomatoes and squash, we'd put the compost there, and the beans and stuff didn't need the compost. Well, people were coming out from everywhere now to buy our vegetables. We was selling to a grocery store in San Antonio. He was brokering it to fine restaurants. We was doing good. Wasn't making a lot of money. That's a lot of work, picking vegetables. Anyway, this one family kept coming out. They was reading organic gardening and farming. They liked to garden, but they were in an area where you couldn't garden. They were buying all my vegetables, and this kid, their son, grandson, it was a mom and dad, a son, an uncle, and a grandma. They always come out as a group and buy everything we had. Well, that son always wanted to buy some of my compost. He was a manure pile to me. He wanted to buy some of my compost for his lawn care business. So I got to thinking, well, these are such good people, I'll go ahead and I'll sell them a pickup load. Well, he put sideboards on his pickup. We loaded it with manure forks, and I don't know what to charge him. He gave me $40. And I got to looking at the $40. I said, damn, that's easy money. Why am I taking this stuff out to the field, preparing the seed bed, planting, cultivating, irrigating, harvesting, packaging, and going to market, let somebody else dictate the price? Why don't I just sell the compost? Well, we started selling compost. And this kid's mother came out one day, and she wanted some mixed with topsoil. Then his uncle came out one time and wanted some mixed with topsoil and sand. Word got around the landscape industry, you go out to this farm, buy a manure, topsoil, and sand mix. Man, here the landscapers came. And I ran out of old rotted stuff. And my boys are still hauling from everywhere now, finding lots of new supplies so they can make money and drive more. And I was mixing the topsoil and the sand with raw manure. And I tell people, hey, you better age this stuff, it's a little bit hot. Well, they bought it anyway. I never had a complaint. And by now, I'm into this business about 2 years, maybe a little younger, and I'm making deliveries. I had a dump pickup. I was making deliveries on my way to the railroad. I had an afternoon job at that time, and I was delivering to this one nursery way south of San Antonio. And her and her daughters was growing plants in big containers from 5 gallons on up to 25 gallons. And usually nurseries that grew in big containers like that always had some weeds in their containers. And I complimented Elaine one day. I said, Elaine, y'all do a good job weeding. You have no weeds in any of your big containers. She said, oh, well, your soil never has any weed seeds in it. Then it dawned on me when you mix the raw manure with the topsoil and sand and let it go through the composting action, it ferments the seeds out. The word got around that you could go out to this farm and get a weed-free manure, topsoil, sand mix. We were forced in business. Pretty soon I just let the farm go. Found an easier way to make money. And we went into the compost business, and these landscapers, one of them would say, Beck, why don't you handle railroad ties so I don't have to stop down? Another said, why don't you handle fertilizer? Another said, why don't you handle tools? Well, pretty soon we had warehouses full of tools and big offices and everything. By 98, we were doing $4 million worth of business. And I didn't even like it. I was having fun working with the people, but I'd rather be growing things. And my wife was doing all the work. She was working herself to death. My boys enjoyed it. Now they're working with big trucks and tractors, air-conditioned cabs. It was fun for them. But it's killing my wife. She wouldn't turn any authority over anybody, hardly. She was a boss. She built it, really. She built it. And a lady came along and offered us some decent money for the business, and she wanted to take it national. Well, by 98, we was grossing $4 million. A little better. Yeah, we'd sell this thing, sit back and relax. Well, this lady really didn't know what she had hold of, and she couldn't manage it, and it collapsed. Within 2 years, she pretty well collapsed. Well, I ran into these people, Texas Disposal. They actually want me to help them make compost at their landfill in Austin. And they were friends of mine, and my wife ran into one of their top employees. And just luck. You know, this lady was on the verge of losing everything. We were too, because we got very little money out of it, you know, not near what we were supposed to get. And I accused my wife of being an angel because every prayer she says it's answered. One day my wife just said, good Lord, don't let this thing die. My husband and I worked too hard for it. And in about 3 days, she ran into one of the top employees here. And they were friends of ours, and this guy gave my wife a hug, and Dale pushed back and said, Jim, your company ought to buy Gardenville. Jim, so am I. Employers always want to be involved with Malcolm. So when I found that out, I took them history on me, a bio on me, and the history of everything, the whole company, you know, everything. Dropped it off on my way to Dallas. I was giving a talk up there on the way back. I visited with these guys. They said, Malcolm, there's nothing there, it's gone. I said, I know that. They said, no, you don't understand. That lady owes you a lot of money. I said, no, I understand that. They said, well, as long as you understand that, we'd like to pick that thing up and go with it. But the Beck family has to come with it. And again, that's the best thing ever happened. So now, my wife and I, we go around the country and we give talks and visit with people like you, Kevin. And it's promotion for the company. I'm doing what I love to do, meet some of the best people in the world. People at Garden are the best people in the world. And it was worth the wait to get to this point. I mean, we kind of led up to it, and of course we were one of the leading composters in the state. And from us, there's lots of compost company now that were employees or students of mine, and it's an industry now. And pretty well all started with that, with bad tonsils, I guess you'd say.
Right.
Made me think. That's one thing a person has to do is think. Anyway, I was reading some of these publications that Rodale Press put out, and there was an article in one of them one day, and they said that none of the people in the penitentiary were ever gardeners. And then some university did a study and they found out that the gardening segment of society was basically the more honest. We got to think about that. And they all said, you know, we've been in business now 20-some years and we ain't never got a bad check. Never got a bad check from a home gardener. You just don't. It just don't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, when I sold to that lady, I told her that. She didn't believe that. She's from Chicago. You know, hell, ever the check's a bad one, I guess. I don't know where she talked. So she went in and asked one of our employees that handles the checks. She said, Alice, when's the last time y'all got a bad check? No, how many bad checks do you get a year? Alice got thinking. She said, you know, I've been here 13 years. I ain't never seen a bad check. So it's, you get to deal with, you know, the finest segment of society that are all interested in nature and interested in living a productive, healthy, happy life. And that's what gardening really is all about.
So if somebody was a gardener or wanting to be a gardener or wanting to be a farmer, what piece of advice would you give them?
You learn from nature.
Learn from nature.
Go out there and plant things. Bob Webster has an old saying is, you're not a nurseryman until you've killed 1,000 plants. Well, you got to make the mistakes I did. You know, I used poison on lady beetles and didn't know it. And every mistake is not a mistake unless you allow it to be a mistake. They're all learning experiences.
Right.
And learn to think. And this professor that came out from Lake Lake University, he was really my mentor. He's the guy that taught me how to think and look and see nature. And he told me one day, he said, Malcolm, think for yourself. He says, don't accept or reject anything you read, see, or hear. He says, but store it and see how it fits. And that was the best advice. You know, some people, when you're telling them something, they want to argue a point. You don't gain anything by arguing. Listen. You know, you don't have to believe it, but store it and see where it fits. And he told me study nature. And then I started reading other books, and I got a hold of a whole series of papers published by Acres USA of Dr. William Albrecht. And William Albrecht, he saw nature. And he was an agronomy professor at the University of Missouri. And he would always tell his students, he said, throw the books away and study nature, you'll learn a whole lot more. A book is one man's opinion. Nothing wrong with studying books. But just like Dale Winnegar said, my mentor, don't accept it or reject it, but store it and see where and if it fits. That's what counts. And of course, William Albrecht, he, when he started coming out with all the chemicals and the poison and everything, he says, you're abusing nature, they're going to get you in trouble. He says, use them properly, they could be all right. He said, but people were abusing it. And he was preaching against it. So I think the fertilizer industry and the chemical industry finally told University of Missouri, hey, squeeze old William Albrecht out of here. He's hurting our business. So they put him to retirement before he should have. And that's happened a lot of places, and it's still happening today.
Oh, yeah.
And it's only because the general public is too lazy to educate themselves. They're too lazy to think.
Right.
They believe everything the damn squawk box tells them instead of thinking.
They hire an expert.
Right.
And the experts are all being manipulated by the markets.
Right. Well, an expert's a guy with a briefcase 100 miles from home.
Traveling medicine show.
Anyway, once you understand nature and learn to live with nature and accept the good and the bad weather and the insect damage and when the squirrels dig up everything and see, hey, they're just doing their thing, what they're supposed to do, and look at them and have fun, all of a sudden life becomes so much fun. And, you know, life is an attitude. And with the right attitude, you'll live a long time. And you'll never be sick, never be healthy. But you have to develop an attitude. And, but you can't develop that attitude living on junk food. Because you're going to be cranky and irritable all the time. So the first thing you got to do is learn to eat right. Learn to eat right. And then you don't need to go someplace and work out on an exercise machine or jog on the side of the highway. All that is so stupid. Go dig in a garden. Go build a compost pile. If you're going to waste all that energy, make it productive. It's so dumb to jog along the side of the highway. Or go work out on an exercise machine. You know, you could be, well, make you some kind of machine when you're working at an exercise machine, you're generating electricity. That would be good.
Right.
Or go spade a garden and come over my place. I'll give you plenty of exercise. Even pay you for doing some of it.
Right. exercise machine is called a shovel.
Or a hoe,
Right,
or a
right.
spade. You can work all your muscles.
Great. Well, thanks for talking with us here on Food You Can Trust, Malcolm. And you mentioned you had some books.
Yeah, I have 3 books. My first original book is The Gardenville Method, Lessons in Nature, and it's kind of a compiling of my other books. And then the next book I got is The Secret Life of Compost, but it's more for the large-scale compost operations. I see some of these large-scale compost operations putting more energy into making the compost than it contains when they get through. That's false economics. That's false natural economics, and your pocketbook is going to lose too. Learn to let it rot. Mimic the forest floor. Study, see what's being going on in nature. That book is if you want to get into the compost business large way. My little blue book, well, it's probably a different color. The new issue that comes out is going into the 4th printing pretty soon. And it's expanded to by 15-20% every time I put out a new issue because I learn new things. And then the next book is Texas Organic Vegetable Growing that I co-authored with Howard Garrett. But our best book is one I started on when I met this Dr. Del Winiger at Lake Lake University, when he started helping me identify insects. And I bought a good camera. Luckily, I ran into a guy who sold me the right camera and told me how to use it. And I got some excellent photographs of insects. And this Del Winiger is always helping me with identification. He told me one day, Malcolm, you're going to talk to the Sierra Club for me. And I said, no, not me. I said, I couldn't even stand up in front of a room and give a talk. I'd just stutter and turn red. He said, you can do it. He said, I'll tell you how to do it. He says, know your subject. That's the main thing. And talk about it with enthusiasm. I said, well, I can do that. And he said, now be yourself. Dress the way you always dress. And I went and gave a talk to 400 people, and it went over great, big. And when I really got a pleasure, though, there was a nun there, and she invited me to speak to her summer class. Well, I thought I was going to have a bunch of, teenagers or college kids. Her summer class was PhDs, college teachers. These guys all had all kinds of degrees, and I'm talking to them. And I go up there dressed like this, just a little bit better than work clothes. And I figured it went over good. And the next day, a new Buick drove up to my farm. And this guy got out, and I saw him. I recognized him before. And he gets out, and he comes up and shakes my hand. He said, Beck, I don't know if you remember me or not. He says, I was in the front row at your class yesterday over in Conard University. He says, there I sat with my PhD, my BAs, and my MBAs. And I said, there you stood with only a high school education, no botany, no biology, nothing like that, with dirt under your fingernails. And I'm sitting, what am I doing sitting here listening to this hick? He said, but you know what? He said, you changed my life. You showed me a better way to look at nature. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know I had dirt under my fingernails. It's fun.
Good.
I do about 60 to 80 talks a year. Meet the best people in the world. Been out to UCLA, University of California at Fullerton, went up to Minnesota several times, down to Mexico and Canada one time. Go everywhere, have a lot of fun. Meet the best people in the world.
Great.
They even pay me to do it.
That's all your good karma built up, all that hard work.
Well, I worked 3 jobs for a long time. Nights on the railroad, the daylights on the farm, and then the business. And trying to juggle all 3 of them. Finally retired from the railroad after 32 years. And now retired from all of it. Now I get to do what I love to do best.
That's a real retirement.
That's real retirement. I'm working harder now probably than I did then. But I'm having fun every minute.
Good. All right, well, thanks again for talking with us. And we'll come see you down in San Antonio sometime.
My pleasure.
Hi folks, it's Kevin here with Food You Can Trust, and we're talking to Lester at Germanio Engineering today about rainwater farming.
Rainwater harvesting.
Rainwater harvesting. Well, this is like a farm though. You're collecting and growing your own water, so to speak. You're collecting it from the air.
That's right.
We're about food you can trust, and what better way to trust your water than to harvest it yourself?
That's correct. What we have is we're building a 40,000 gallon cistern for the rainwater harvesting, and we have 6,600 square feet of roof area, metal roof area. It's a painted metal roof that's a Kynar 500, which is low oxidation, won't contribute much to the contamination of the water. We have a cistern that we'll initially store the water. From there, we're going to have a 12-volt battery-operated pump that's operated by, the battery's operated or charged by solar energy. The water will be pumped to a water tower up the hill. It'll hold 2,000 gallons and be gravity fed to the 3 different buildings. The water tower, the top of the water tower from the grade will be about 30 feet tall, and we anticipate that should take care of all our water needs. If we're ever off the grid, we don't have to worry about electricity running pumps, any hydro pneumatic tanks. It'll be completely, like I said, the pump will be solar operated. Everything else is gravity flow water into the tank, pumped up, gravity flowed into the house, and we have water. And we have a filtering system that is a floating filter, floating 3-part filter. It'll go through a UV filter, which kills all the bacteria. Then the last part, the drinking water, each of the drinking water stations will go through an inline Dalton filter. We'll take out 0.9 micron, which is about the best we can filter water. It's a low pressure, low volume type filter, but it'll take care of all the drinking water. And that's basically our water system, and the water system is part of a food, water, shelter project that the food and shelter go along similar lines.
So I talked to one guy that's out near Bastrop, and he's taking rainwater and just drinking it straight. Now, how much does rainwater need to be filtered, or does it need to be filtered more because you're in the city instead of in the country?
Well, basically everybody drinks rainwater, even the people in town who think they would never drink it, except theirs flows down the streets over dogs' crap,
right,
into the lake. Then they put some chlorine in it and then pump it in through the pipes. So they drink rainwater too. But my preference to have the purest I can, if I have my floating filter 1 foot from the surface, so anything that floats, we don't pull out. Anything that settles, we don't pull out. So we're pulling the cleanest water out of the tank, and we're filtering that. Then we're using the UV to kill any bacteria or viruses that may be in there. And then the last thing, any drinking water is going to be the finest filter that's on the market right now, is the Dalton filter. So that should give me the best water as possible to have. It should surpass the quality of the city's water 100-fold.
So it'd be like better than bottled water that you might buy at the store.
It should be.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably some bottled water that is probably about as pure as it can be, but a lot of it is nothing but filtered water, and I'm going to be filtering with a better filter than most of the filtered water that's bottled.
So you set your house up so you've got 3 different areas so that you use the ventilation, natural ventilation, and you won't need air conditioning.
Right. The house is based on shading and ventilation. As you can see, we have 8-foot overhangs on every west wall, 4-foot overhangs everywhere else. Every building is only 1 room wide. All the buildings are connected with a trellis or artificial canopy that's going to be full of green growies that provide anywhere from 50% to 100% shade in different areas, depending how we build our trellis. And that net space between the buildings is as important as any other space we have in the buildings. The guest house is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. The far building is an office above a garage, which has the leaning 2-car carport next to it. And this is a 1-bedroom, 1-bath house, which will be for my wife and I. And it includes a sleeping porch, which is a real important feature. We are shooting to be functional off the grid. That means no air conditioning. Sleeping porch is necessary for a house that has no air conditioning, even if you ventilate the heck out of them. So basically, starting from netting, sleeping porch, bedroom, all the bathrooms, dressing, closet, and then this area is all one large living, kitchen, and dining that opens out. And the top of this cistern is going to be our large deck, which is going to be about 2/3 covered. We still have the 8-foot of roof overhang from here out, which covers about 2/3 of this, but that will be our outside view area deck, which we have a nice view. It's not looking at the city of Austin, but we are looking at Wild Basin Preserve, Burial Preserve, Loop 360. And the lid on this will be a very functional deck.
So do you have any suggestions for somebody who, say, has a conventional house that would be interested in harvesting rainwater? They, like, it's safe to water your garden with a shingle roof if you collected it?
Yes, you can do that. The purpose of this project wasn't just to collect water for watering your garden.
Right.
This is a way to survive if the grid goes down or we can't afford to be on the grid anymore.
So say somebody just, you know, they didn't have the money to put the kind of sheet metal roof on that would make it safe for drinking, but you would still encourage them to collect rainwater for their garden or other needs.
Yeah, definitely, because we're going to have a shortage of rainwater. Water is going to be, we're going to be butting up a shortage of water just like we are oil. I mean, right now the city's fighting to sell back sewage to LCRA. That's how much water is worth nowadays. A lot of cities are up to their limit on how much water they can draw. People are going to have to start harvesting rainwater and using it, because we can't, I don't know, everything we've done in the last 50 years, we've just wasted too much.
Right.
We're going to have to start getting closer to being sustainable. And if it takes living in a house with no air conditioning, if it takes drinking rainwater, if it takes putting your hands in soil, make things grow out of it, that's what it's going to take.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're about. Well, thanks for talking with us on the show today, and best wishes on your project. It looks like quite a huge thing. And
oh yeah.
You know, I'd just like to encourage everybody that's watching to, you know, maybe take this kind of project on a smaller scale, something that, you know, they can get started and get going, and just get a rainwater collection tank and start messing around with it and expand from there.
Yeah. Everybody is going to need to do something. It can't be just a few people going all the way. Everybody's got to do something to save some oil, got to save some water, every other resource we have.
So you're kind of trying to set an example.
This is supposed to be a demonstration project for food, water, and shelter for when the time comes that we're not on the grid or can't afford to be on the grid.
All right. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.
Want some food?